Today's question is when to hire and how many nights to book. Imagine it's 3 a.m. in your New York City apartment and your baby is awake again. You try to recover and your partner is going back to work soon. And suddenly you realize you don't just need some support. You need the right postpartum doula plan. Because 2 nights of overnight support versus 3 nights, for example, of overnight support are not the same plan. And most families do not wait too long because they're careless. They wait because before the baby arrives, the postpartum period is still so abstract. In this video, I will show you how to build a realistic postpartum support plan for New York City families. We will talk about when to hire your postpartum doula, how many nights would make sense for your family, because every family is so different, and what overnight support actually looks like, especially in New York City apartments. How partners can think about support throughout feeling replaced. And later I will also explain how employer benefits like curated, Maven, Progyny, or similar platforms may fit into your plan, because for some families, it can change what level of support feels possible. A thoughtful support plan can make the first weeks feel less improvised. And in New York City, that matters because postpartum here has its own logistics. When to hire your postpartum doula. The best time to plan postpartum support is before you urgently need it. And for many New York City families, a good time to start looking into the postpartum doula world is during the 2nd trimester, often between the 22nd and the 28th week of pregnancy. And it definitely doesn't mean you should panic if the baby is already here. But the 2nd trimester gives you time to compare options, time to understand your budget, check employer benefits, think through your apartment setup, decide what you want, daytime support, overnight support, or both. Because postpartum support is not just a support. It is someone is entering your private space during a very tender time. And in New York City, experienced overnight doulas and postpartum doulas may book ahead, especially over those popular due date windows. So if you already know that you want overnight support, it can be helpful to begin earlier with your search. But here's the important part. If you're already 36 weeks pregnant, 38 weeks pregnant, or already home with your little one, and you realize we need support, we need help, it's still worth it to reach out, especially when you're working with a curated collective or matching platform. There may be more than one doula available. Availability can change quickly, so keep that in mind, but you do not need to assume that because you missed the ideal window or the ideal planning window, there is no option left. And the first question is not, are we too late? The first question is, what kind of support do we actually need? That is where most families get stuck. So we are going into the question, how many nights should you book? Because 2 weeks of overnight support versus 5 weeks, as I already mentioned, is a completely different postpartum rhythm and can change a lot. But before we're talking about the exact number, to get this number, we need to ask a couple of questions. How are you planning to feed your baby? For example, exclusively breastfed, or are you willing to pump and do a combination of those two probably? Or will the baby be formula fed? How many weeks will your partner have off and can support you? How about sleep? Are you a good sleeper or a bad sleeper? And can you probably catch up during the time with a lack of sleep? Or is there another baby or toddler you need to take care of? How was the birth and how are you actually recovering physically? Your budget, reimbursement options. Have you thought about those topics? Is family close? Is there someone who you can reach out, for example, in the morning and who can support you in the morning where you still nap or rest after a rough night, and who can take care of the baby? Because every family and every setup is so different. By answering all those questions, you will get an idea what are your needs. The next thing that can make sense is a step-down plan. This is often a good fit for families who want more help in the beginning, but do not want to book intensive overnight care for the entire postpartum period. For example, start with 5 overnights per week for 2 weeks and then temper it down to 3 or 2 overnights per week at a later postpartum week. Starting with a higher number at the beginning can make sense, as that is the most intense time as you build your rhythm and your confidence. Not because the baby all of a sudden sleeps through the night in week 4, 5, or 6, but because it's the most intense time. But if your partner needs to go back to work after 3 weeks and he or she really needs those 6 or 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, it could make sense to continue with a higher number of overnight support, or, for example, to cover those specific days or nights that are crucial. That way, you're not going too many nights in a row without support. And working on weekends is a great topic to discuss individually with your doula upfront before you're signing the contract. Another strategy can be a higher support plan. This is more consistent overnight support through many weeks, which means 5 or more overnights per week, depending on family, budget, availability, and your needs. This may make sense for family with twins or a difficult recovery, or very limited local support, means you have no family or friends around, or a partner who is returning quickly back to work. Or a household where both parents know they really need to focus on sleep and recovering, because you don't want to be exhausted by week 3 or 2 in your postpartum period. And I also want to make clear, these are not rules, just starting points and what I know from my experience. So I also want to mention that there is no right and wrong about numbers and setups, because every family is so different. And what may make perfectly sense for one family couldn't work at all for the other, and the other way around. Later, I will also talk about employer benefits like curated, Maven, and Progyny, because if you have access through those benefits, your support plan may look completely different than your first assumed. Now I want to dive into the actual overnight support and what to expect from your doula. But before we go in deeper into what actually happens during an overnight shift, I want to give you one practical next step. If you're trying to decide between 2 overnights, 3 overnights, or 5 overnights, visit the DOULA Base partner guides linked below. There's also a postpartum planning section for New York City families with more guidance on when to hire your doula, how many nights per week, and how to think through the support before the baby actually arrives. Use this video as an overview and use the guide when you want to slow down and compare what actually fits your family. Because the right number of overnights usually becomes clearer when you look at your real life. And if you're watching this and you are thinking, this sounds helpful, but we are living in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, stay with me, because in a few minutes, I will talk exactly about those topics, how overnight doulas work in a real New York City apartments, including 1-bedrooms, walk-ups, and living room that are already doing 5 jobs. Next big question, what does an overnight postpartum doula actually do? An overnight doula is not there to magically make your baby sleep. She's there to bring a calm structure to those unpredictable nights. That can be part of it, but the real value is often the calm rhythm she brings to the nights, as she has done this many, many times. The first couple of weeks and months, your baby's sleep is unpredictable. Sometimes they're waking up because they're dealing with some digestion issues, and sometimes they have just issues to fall back asleep and just want to be held. Your doula will follow your baby's schedule regarding feeding. And if your baby just needs to be held, she will also help the baby through this phase. If a baby requests just skin to skin or being held, those are really bare instincts. When the doula arrives to her shift, the first 30 to 45 minutes are giving her an update. For example, the baby was super sleepy, the baby was gassy, we changed formula, etc. It is also time where you can ask your doula questions. questions you collected over the time or during your last overnight, which was on your own, and ask her all those topics. It is also time that she shows you something. For example, if you're mentioning that you are always experiencing a huge blowout at 2 a.m. when you're doing an overnight on your own, ask her, how are you changing diapers? And she will show you and guide you through those processes. Then the doula will take over and you can go rest and recover or having a shower without lifting the shower curtain every 30 seconds. And then we have 3 options regarding the feeding. The first thing would be the mom is breastfeeding during the overnight. So you will see each other on a regular basis every 2.5 to 3 hours. And that means the doula is either texting the mom, calling the mom, or knocking on the mom's bedroom and let her know when the baby is due with a feed. Either you're handing over the baby to the mom and the mom is feeding, or the mom needs some advice and you're both sitting down in the living room on the couch and you can get some support regarding breastfeeding. And then by the time the baby is done with a feed, the mom is calling the doula or just walking over and handing the baby back to the doula. Here are 2 more topics who need to be discussed up front. The first topic is if the baby would be hungry again, let's say after 35 minutes, is the doula allowed to give the baby formula as a top-off? Or should the doula reach out to the mom again? Or is the doula allowed to use a pacifier? The second scenario would be the mom is pumping during the night. Most of the times the moms are pumping on their own schedule, which means the doula is just grabbing the pumped milk from the fridge and is completely following her own schedule, which means the baby and the mom is not 100% on the same schedule, but it's a bit more flexible. And the mom is just setting an alarm. She's pumping during this time. And at one point, the baby is waking up and the doula is grabbing the milk. Scenario 3 would be the baby's formula fed, so the mom is not involved. After every feed, doesn't matter which scenario, the doula is burping the baby, the doula is changing the baby's diaper and is then soothing the baby back to sleep. This is the big question mark. We don't know if this takes 15 or 35 minutes. So this is a nice time where someone else is in charge and where the moms can already go back to sleep and recover and heal. During an overnight, doulas can also do light household duties like folding laundry, cleaning the bottles they use. It is a kind of a question mark depending on the setup on your apartment, if it makes sense to unload a dishwasher or to start a new load of laundry. It is worth discussing it, but as I say, it depends on the setup regarding noise and we don't want to wake up anyone. In the morning, the mom or the dad are taking back over and the doula is giving them an update. For sure, if the mom breastfed overnight, she knew that she was awake at 1 a.m. and, for example, at 3 a.m. But if the doula just grabbed the pump milk from the fridge and was feeding the baby, she gives the parents feedback. The baby, for example, drank 2 ounces at 1 a.m. and then she had a pee or poop diaper. Some families also using apps, for example, Huckleberry, and the doula can log into the same app and type in all the things happened overnight. If they're not using an app, it's nice sending a text and summarize everything. Because the first 10 to 14 days, the babies are allowed to lose up to 10% of their birth weight. And this is the reason, especially with breastfeeding, it's super important to track those pee and poops, because sometimes we're losing a bit sense of time. Was it 2 a.m. or was it 2 p.m. when was the last poop? And so those apps or just a piece of paper where everyone is writing next to the changing table what happened is super helpful. The next topic are small apartments, the reality in New York City. You do not need a guest room to have overnight doula support in New York City. This is a very real question for so many families because most of them are in 1 or max 2 bedroom apartments. Some have older children sleeping nearby. Some have a living room that is also an office or a nursery. So many families have those same topics. weeks. Where does the doula sleep? Most of the doulas request at least having the option to lying down somewhere at one point when the baby is also sleeping. Experienced New York City postpartum doulas are used to those real city homes. And many overnight setups are simple. The most important things for doulas is that the baby is in a safe sleep space in their bassinet. Here are a few important tools. A small light, a changing table with all the things you need, a place for bottles, pump pads, burp clothes, wipes, and water, and a clear conversation before the first shift about privacy, about, for example, bathroom access, kitchen use, general expectation, and also what I mentioned before regarding feeding, pacifier, formula, etc. That is it. And a doula is not coming to inspect your apartment. She's coming to support your family and to support you where you are. You don't have to clean up before she's coming. As I said, doulas are so used to those New York City apartment setups. And it's a different thing if it's an elevator building in the Upper East Side compared to a brownstone in Fort Greene. If it's in Hoboken, an apartment, or in Park Slope. Or if it's in Williamsburg, a one-bedroom with a toddler, or a larger home in New Jersey. The right doula will understand that, and this is why experience matters. Because postpartum support in New York City is not just about newborn care, it's also about newborn care inside of real New York City lives. Before we go over those employee benefits, there is one conversation we need to have, especially for partners. Postpartum doula does not replace a partner. It is important to know and to understand because many partners are first those persons who are reaching out, who are checking or filling out inquiry forms, who are checking costs, who are planning schedules, and they're reaching out and Googling night nurse New York City or overnight doula near me, and they check their benefit portals. They are trying to make a good decision for their families. And all of a sudden, someone is coming into their home and it can create the situation that they feel they are replaced. But if you're hiring a doula, that does not mean you're not enough. No, this is a certain point in life. And the goal is not to remove you as a partner. It is to include you and to make the best setup for your family. That it's beneficial for the birthing person, for the partner, for the baby, and if there's a toddler, even for the toddler. That you have a great start into this postpartum period and that you're not struggling with the lack of sleep, the hormonal change, and a crying baby. For sure, you can still face those topics, but at least if you're having help who is coming into your home, you can have such a better start and it will make things way easier. First baby versus second baby support. The support you need with your first baby is often not the same support you will need with your second. First-time parents and second-time parents often need different kinds of postpartum support. First-time parents are usually learning everything at once. Feeding, diaper change, newborn sleep, soothing techniques, safe sleep, bathing, etc. What sounds are normal? What questions should we ask our pediatrician? What is just part of a newborn phase and what is not normal? The first-time parents' postpartum support is often part rest, part education, and part emotional grounding. And you are building confidence and you are learning your baby. You are learning yourself as a parent, and second-time parents, it's a completely different story as you already have a child. So they know, for example, how hard nights can be. They remember the sleep deprivation. They remember what worked out quite well and what didn't work out. And now they may have an older child at home, so someone also need to take care of the older child, mentioning school drop-off, emotional attention, or patience in general. A parent who has to wake up and be available to an older sibling, even after a rough night with a newborn, is a lot. For second-time parents, overnight support is often not about learning the basics. It's all about protecting the daytime life dynamic. It is about having energy, rest to be kind to your toddler, enough patience to handle transition, or enough recovery space to not feel like everyone's needs are colliding at the same time after a long time. That is a very real reason to plan support. Not because you cannot handle 2 kids, but 2 kids create a completely different postpartum request. Employer benefits. Before you assume postpartum support is fully out of pocket, please check your employer benefits. As many New York City families work for companies that offer family building, fertility, or postpartum related benefits, sometimes through platforms like Curated, Maven, Progyny, or similar programs. If you don't have these benefits, do not worry. Everything we just talked about still applies. You can still build a thoughtful support plan around your budget. Coverage depends on your specific employer plan, not just the platform name. This may be a good moment to pause or screenshot the next list, because there are a few questions you want to ask before you book your doula. Ask your provider the following questions. Does my plan include postpartum doula support? Does it include overnight support? What documents are required? Do I need an invoice? Do I pay first and get reimbursed after? Are there tax or paycheck implications? That last question is important. For example, some employer benefits may be treated as taxable incomes or may affect your paycheck, depending on how the benefit is structured. This is something you need to clarify with HR or your tax professional. Doula-based doulas can provide clear invoices with all the requested details, but we cannot guarantee reimbursement. And we cannot tell how your specific employer will process the benefit. But we can help you finding your doula. We can help you think through the documentation question early. If you have Curated, Maven, or Progyny, please check before you make a decision, because the answer, yes, you have financial reimbursement, may change your complete plan. Why matching matters. This is where Googling postpartum doulas near me is not enough. Some families start by searching night nurse or overnight doula or doulas near me, and some just type how many nights do we need. But the real question is, who is the right fit for my home? My baby, my recovery, my partner, my building, my schedule, my communication plan, my feeding plan, my older child, if there is one, and my budget. And this is why matching matters. When families search along, they may end up compromising dozens of profiles without knowing what they look for. One doula may be wonderful with overnight newborn care, versus another one may be especially strong with breastfeeding support. And another may be a great fit for a second-time parent. Another may have a calm and confident skill with twins. Another may be better for daytime emotional support or household tasks. The question is not only, is this doula experienced? The question is this the right kind of experience for this family? Doula Base New York City is a curated doula matching platform and collective. That means we focus on fit. We look at your due date, your neighborhood, your support goals, your schedule, your family structure, your preferences, your benefit situation if relevant. And then we recommend a small number of doulas who maybe actually make sense. Not a directory of random profiles of 20 names. A thoughtful match. Because during pregnancy and postpartum, too many options can cause stress and you can feel overwhelmed. The goal is to help you to take the next clear step. How to build your postpartum support plan. If you're trying to build your postpartum support plan, start simple. First, decide when you want to have support. Immediately after birth, or for example, after your partner returned to work. Only overnight support or only daytime support. A few nights a week or a combination of daytime and overnight. Second, decide what you are trying to protect. Sleep, recovery, feeding support, mental load, other sibling transition, partner work schedule, or budget. Third, choose a starting model. As we talked about the step-down support, it probably makes sense start with a higher number of support and then temper it down. For example, 3 nights a week support if you want to have consistent support, or more consistent overnight support if you know your family needs higher level of help. Fourth, Check your benefits, especially if you have Curated, Maven, Progyny, or other employees platforms. Ask what is covered. Ask what paperwork is needed. Ask your tax treatment. Fifth, reach out before you have the feeling you're completely burned out. There is no shame in needing support after a baby arrived. Postpartum is not a testing phase on how much you can endure. It is a period that deserves structure. And in a city like New York, structure matters. Because your support plan has to work in your apartment, your job, your commute, your older child, your feeding goals, your recovery, and the reality that many families here do not have grandparents around the corner. So if you're pregnant or postpartum in New York City, means Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, or Staten Island, or in New Jersey, Hoboken, Jersey City, or nearby areas, and you're trying to figure out what kind of support makes sense, you can start the first step here. Fill out the Doula Base matching form. Tell us your due date, your neighborhood, what kind of support you're looking for, and whether you're using employer benefits or you're paying out of pocket. We will help you think through the next steps and match you with a great postpartum doula who fits into your family. You do not need to have the whole plan figured out yet before you're reaching out, as this is part where we can help you. If this helps you understand postpartum planning more clearly, you can find the Doula Base New York City matching form in this description.